been in the square that night. These parents were running back and forth, and they were saying, want to go into the square looking for our children. And an officer came out with a loud hailer, and he said, I'm going to count to 5, and then we're going to fire.
Then all the people would realize that the guns were pointed at them, and they'd go running past the hotel. And then the soldiers would fire in their backs. I felt like I was watching some terrible opera.
And a lot of people went down. 30, 40, 50 people are knocked down. Everybody else ran away. I'm lying in the grass thinking, this is the worst thing ever. This is hell.
But the odd thing was that after a little while, like 40 minutes, an hour, people would gather their nerve again and crawl back to the corner and start screaming at the soldiers. And then the commander would eventually give another signal, and the soldiers would raise their rifles again. And the people go, oh my God, and they'd run away and they'd shoot more in the backs. And this went on more than half a dozen times in the day. It was, to me, unbelievable.
There then suddenly appeared, right there, an ambulance. And they rush in amongst all the people who were on the ground. And the soldiers open fire again and mow them down.
The soldiers shot everybody. Doctors, nurses, rescuers. Everybody was being shot at.
This was a real massacre. This was the targeting and the shooting down of totally nonviolent, innocent civilians.
No one knows for certain how many people died. The Chinese Red Cross initially reported 2,600 and immediately retracted under intense government pressure. The official figure is 241 dead, including 23 officers and soldiers, and 7,000 wounded. All we can be sure of is that by the third day, June the 5th, the army was in complete control. Beijing seemed utterly vanquished until an unknown young man made his astounding gesture of defiance.
The symbolism of what he did was overwhelmingly clear. He spoke for the Beijing people. Before June 4th, you had millions of people all over China in the cities, up in the streets, peacefully demanding more rights, freedom, democracy, press freedom, end to corruption. After June 4th, what did you have? You had one man, one sacrificial figure almost, who took it on himself to speak for everyone else who had been silenced by that time.
But what happened to that young man? The only clue comes in the last few seconds when he was hustled away by 4 men. Their identity is key.
I feel very strongly that it was Public Security Bureau people that got him. They were on the rooftops with binoculars and walkie-talkies, and they were controlling the outer areas of the square as you would control any military operation, the high ground. It seemed like they had snatched teams of people they were conducting down below. Even if it wasn't PSB, I seriously doubt he could have gotten past the net of security.
Well, if it was the PSB who took him to one side, what would have been his fate?
Well, I felt pretty strongly that he was executed. We saw a lot of public executions put on Chinese TV shortly after that. And it was for people that had done far less offenses than embarrass the government in such a way.
In the aftermath of the Beijing massacre, tens of thousands all across the country were arrested. Unknown numbers were executed, some are still in prison today. China television portrayed these people as counter-revolutionaries, hooligans, and agents of foreign powers. But they never produced the young protester who had become the most powerful symbol of resistance to the regime.
I don't think they had him, or they would have, at that stage, displayed him. I think that the people who took the tank man away were concerned people. If you've ever seen security people manhandle a Chinese citizen, they're really brutal. They twist your arm, they make you bend over, they punch you a few times, they kick you. So to me, I think he was helped to the side of the road. He wasn't being arrested.
Now that raises the intriguing possibility that he's still alive.
I think that he is. The fact that we have not heard from him since that amazing incident tells me he's still alive, he's still there, he has not been caught, and he's certainly not telling anybody that he's the man.
If Tank Man has survived, where is he now? Since the day he made his heroic stand, his country has changed beyond recognition. Old economic dogmas have been cast aside in favor of raw capitalism. The results are dramatic. Since the Beijing massacre, the economy has grown at a staggering rate of 9% a year and is now the fourth largest in the world. 15 years ago, this entire skyline didn't exist, just paddy fields. China's rise is the story of the 21st century, and it is rooted in the events of 1989.
This was Deng Xiaoping's great moment of genius after the massacre of 1989. What he basically said to people was, folks, you're in a room. There are two doors. One door says politics, one door says economics. You open the economic door, you're on your own, you can go the full distance, do basically whatever you want, get wealthy, help your family, have a bright future, move forward into a glorious future. You open the political door, you're going to run right into one obstruction after another, and you're going to run into the state.
And for many of those who rose against the regime, principally city people, the deal has paid off. Never in the course of human history has a larger number of people gained more wealth in such a short time. Since 1989, China has seen the emergence of a new urban middle class estimated at over 200 million people. But that's only a fraction of China's population.
There really seem to be two Chinas today. China A and China B. China A is big cities where businessmen and foreign governments go. Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, modern. And then you have China B, the undeveloped or developing China, which is the vast majority of the country. This China is still very poor, not getting better because all the economic growth is concentrated in the cities. It's a profoundly unequal system, and it's a system whose contradictions we see every day are playing out more and more.
It's a dizzying descent from the skyscrapers and freeways to this. And yet there have been changes here, real changes for the better. Under the old collective system, peasants were virtually slaves of the state. Now they own, or rather lease, their plots and are free to sell their produce on the open market. But what the state gave with one hand, it has taken away with the other.
Education and healthcare have totally collapsed in the past 20 years. Education used to be free and accessible for every child in China. But now there is not one kid in China that doesn't have to pay to go to school.
Something like less than a penny in American money per year in the rural areas is spent on health care. It's virtually gone. It's just not there. So if you get sick, you depend on local herbal remedies and folklore or die.
There are almost 1 billion people in China B, including at least 750 million peasant farmers and their families. What's so striking here is not just the sense of timelessness, but the absence of young adults.
You just can't make a living